right, everybody. All right, everybody, all you beautiful people around the world. I'm talking about the globe. I'm talking about across the ponds and the rivers and the lakes and the oceans. People watching me because I got one lady hit me up out of Cairo. I got a guy hit me up out of Jamaica. And I got a show enough lady on the channel today who is out of Australia. Man, I thought I might want to go to Australia, but that's a long airplane ride. And so maybe I got to get my nerve up. I ain't scared to fly. Well, I am a little afraid, but you know what I mean? I'll do it one day. I like to go over there because there's a lot of good stuff going on, and I really want to see that that auditorium that's on the water, you know, that beautiful building everybody show you. And then I hear they got some brothers and sisters over there that's jamming. So you got to come meet them. You got to come hear the story. And so, you know, it's on my bucket list, everybody. A lot of good things is happening here at the channel. I got to tell you some of them right quick here. First of all, 2 days ago, we hit over 500 subscribers. Now, I'm so excited. My goal is 5,000. And I'm talking about in the next 4 months. So if you're watching me and you just don't hit the subscribe button, it's free. I don't know what the issue is. Just go on and hit it and tell somebody else to subscribe. Let's let this thing go viral. Let's go huge, because I'm on to something good by letting the people tell the stories. I don't know, you might be able to get it somewhere else. I don't know where else. And wherever else you can get it, I'd like to know, because I want to watch them giving it on their situation. But on my situation, I'm finding the people, and you know what I do? I just asked a couple questions. Maybe I think I asked some intelligent questions, because I really just, I'd be like, man, I don't understand that. How'd that go? What are you talking about? But what happened? That's how I do it. And so come on, hit that subscribe button. I like this video. If you know, just hit it. Just say I like it. You know, let the likes come up so we know I'm on to something good. Hit the notifications bell so when the videos come out, you get a ding, you get an electric shock. You get a shock that said, hey man, hey woman, you got to go to Strong Inspirations, because it's something good that's just been said. You need to hear it. And tell somebody about us, what we doing. I think, well, check this out. I just had an idea just 2 seconds ago. I'm gonna come out with a t-shirt to say Strong Inspirations on it, and where you can get it on my website. You might want one of them. I'm gonna work that out. And maybe some other items that say Strong Inspiration. How about this? I'm gonna have a festival. If you watch one of my other videos, I've been talking about it. I just had a phone call with a lady out of the town where I'm having the festival. It's called Quindaro, Kansas. I just found a lady who's a native of this town. She's a bigwig, right? She know everybody doing it. She says she's gonna help me pull it off. I want 1,000 people to show up Memorial Day weekend 2021 in Quindaro, Kansas. I think what you do is you fly into, you fly into Kansas City, Kansas, and you drive, I don't know, 20 minutes, or 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and you ain't, how about this? On that Friday, we're gonna party in a barn, wear your dusty blue jeans, and we're gonna drink some moonshine, whatever that is, and a little bit of, don't get drunk though. And we don't want to carry you out, because I don't know where they put the drunk people in Quindaro. That might not be good. And we're gonna drink some sweet tea, and we're gonna eat some ribs. I don't eat pork, but we're gonna eat some who do. You can eat ribs and all that. We're gonna have vendors, and then on Saturday we're gonna take a tour of the city, because what happened in Quindaro was, back in the day of them slavery, that Missouri was a slave state, and Quindaro and Kansas was not. They used to walk across the water when it froze to get there. And I'm sure you still had to be on the safe side. You know, you had to worry about the catchers and the masters and all them cats being mad at you for leaving. But a couple of people made it. I don't know, maybe hundreds of them. I interviewed a guy whose great grandfather was one of them. My man was so tight that when he got to Quindaro, he got his family, and then he opened up a business and got wealthy. Man, you can't hold us back. My man walk on water and then own a business at the end of the day in this town. So that's the beauty of Quindaro. Check out the video on the channel. I got some other stuff going down. I'm enjoying this. This is what I do. And the sister that's on the channel today, I'm excited. I sent out a message somehow on Facebook, and I think I typed in, is there any Black history in Australia? And her page popped up. She's gonna tell you about the page. It popped up. I sent her a message. Lady sent me a message, and we've been messaging. We've been talking and stuff. And so here she is. On a personal tip, you know, what I do for my living, and I need you to, if you will, support the cause. I got this movie. I've done a documentary called Business in the Black, The Rise of Black Business in America. Slaves who went to college. Black millionaires in the 1800s. It's 75 powerful minutes. How about this? The movie starts and ends with a guy that at the time was 101 years old. And one of the comments that he makes is, y'all can't tell me nothing. I'm 101. I done seen it all. You got to watch this. It's streaming on Amazon, and I'm about to put it on Tubi. So you ain't got to pay Amazon. You just go right to Tubi and watch it for free. That's coming up real soon. I'll announce when it's up there. But this is what you can do right now. You can do that too, but you can do this now. I got this book. That's how serious I am. And the book is very reasonably priced. You order it, I ship it out the same day. I just put in a new order. I got a bunch of them in my basement. So I want them out of the basement and in your hands. I know what's in the book. And it's like the movie, but I got a lot more facts. Oh man, how about this? I tell you all the ways slaves got their freedom. And one of the ways that people don't know is they sued for it. Man, we tired of being under this bondage. And they sued in court and won. I got a lady in the book, I tell you her name and everything, who sued for her freedom. And I got a guy who talks about it on the channel. I ain't joking. All the ways slaves got their freedom is in my book. 13, 14, 15 slave-owned businesses. You need to read this. It's easy. And I'll tell you how easy it is, because I'm not no big reader. Don't tell nobody I told you that. I got to act intelligent, but I'm not no big reader, so I don't even give you no commentary. I just let the facts stand on its own. And then if you don't believe me, because all I did was kind of rewrite it when I found it. I can't cheat and just type what they type. So I had to rewrite it a little bit. I ain't gonna lie to you. But even then, I don't add no commentary. I just changed the words around. How about that? And if you don't believe the fact, I got the link in the back of the book where I found it. Now, if you don't believe that, then you can keep looking. I ain't gotta lie to you about these great things that we did over them years, no matter what they held us back. So get a copy of my book, my friends. I really appreciate it. And to get the book, how about this? Just go to my website, businessintheblack.net. Just go there. And one more thing, two more things. If you order my book, I'll autograph it. And that's gonna mean something. Watch. You order my book, I'll autograph. It's worth the price to get the autograph. And then how about one more thing on the book? Every 10th book I sell, I donate one to a school. Because somehow I slept on the class that told these kind of things, if they told it to us. That's why I'm even doing this. I don't know what happened, man. I got good grades in grade school. And so I don't know, maybe they just didn't say these things. Some people told me they heard about it. Where you hear that at, man? I ain't hear that. Read the book, that's where it's at. All in one compilation. And so every 10th book I sell, I donate one to a school. Buy 10 of them. And then we'll donate the book in your honor. I'll write the letter, I give you the books, you write the letter, whatever. But get the kids, let them hear these stories. It'll make them feel better about themselves. All right. Last thing, I know the sister, she's sitting there, she waiting. She said, man, I got to tell this, it's on my heart. This is what I do for a living, is tell Black history in Australia. I didn't even know it had that kind of thing. I use that word strong a lot, right? And it's my favorite word. I put it on everything. Strong, 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 which means strong means strength, tenacity, resilience, and a sense of oneness, nobility, and grace. That's my introduction to the lady on the channel. She a strong lady. Come on, sister, introduce yourself. Let's get it on. Thank you so very much for being on the channel.
Thanks for having me.
My name's Sam Cook. I'm from the Walmatjarri and Nyikina nations. Not too many people know, as you've kind of indicated, that Australia is a Black country, and it's a part of who I am as an Aboriginal person of Australia.
Hold on. Okay, you say Australia is a Black country. What do you mean by that?
That from the beginning of the existence of Australia, it was in the possession of 800 Aboriginal nations, 800 Black nations. In 1788, Britain commenced its illegal occupation of Australia, and to this day have no legal standing to be in our countries. It's without treaty, and it's an example of colonization in the world. But yeah, we're affirming our place as the Aboriginal people of Australia. We're making sure that we're amplifying our voices globally, participating in our international people of color conversations. And, I love the fact that today I'm able to take you on a bit of a journey through what Black Australia looks like, feels like, and where we're at.
Okay, let me ask you this then. Okay, I interrupt people every now and then because the questions pop in my head and I ain't writing them down. Where is Australia? Let's start there.
Okay, Australia's in the southern hemisphere, so it's sort of tucked away near New Zealand. It's under Asia and just a little bit above Antarctica. So we're definitely right at the bottom of the world.
What's the weather like in Australia?
It's diverse because the country is so big. So it's the only island continent of the world. You've got snowfields in certain parts. Where I'm from is incredibly hot and humid. So we're the sort of desert communities that sort of touch the ocean up in the northwest of Western Australia. And then you've got big rainforests. So it's very diverse as the nations that occupy it.
Okay. What about this? Where is Australia is a continent, right?
Yes, an island continent.
Are there countries in Australia?
So as Aboriginal people, there's over 800 countries. So our worldview is that we are very much similarly to going to Europe or going to Africa, where you've got different nations and territories and countries within a continent. We have those as Aboriginal people, but with the forced genocide, Australia and its illegal occupation have attempted to erase that over the last 273 years.
Okay, name three countries in Australia.
Okay, well, I can name two, which are mine. Okay. So the Nyikina country, so that's up in the northwest. It touches the ocean, the Indian Ocean, and then you've got Walmatjarri, which is in the desert. So that you're moving towards central Australia, and that's a desert culture. So that's an area where all the rivers often run under the ground. You don't see it. All you see is the soil above. And then if we go very south, you've got 14 countries that comprise the Noongar Nation. So that again is another distinct cultural group from us, and they, similarly to us, have their own customs and rituals and protocols, and Black people.
So a country is really dictated by the culture of that country. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Yeah, in the same way as
so that makes that up. Okay.
France and Belgium has its own, customary laws and culture, and Britain is a composite of everyone's culture. As we know, they steal and borrow a lot of things.
Okay.
So,
how many people, do you know this, live in Australia, the continent, and then compared to how many people might live in two of the countries? What's the largest countries?
So the total population of Australia is just a little over 24 million. The total population of California is 34 million. So
Okay.
Australia, in terms of populations on its entirety, is very small. Within that, the Aboriginal population is 3%. So we're about 300,000 still remaining in terms of, the original people of Australia.
How far, do you know this, how long would it take, I don't know if to drive or fly, from the bottom of Australia to the top of Australia? That gives an idea how big it is.
Yeah, so if I drive within the state of Western Australia from the Noongar Nation up to my traditional country, it's almost 2 days. But if I cross from the Noongar Nation over to the, let's say, Sydney, where you said you wanted to see the Sydney Opera House, that's going to take you a week.
Okay.
And that's solid driving, don't have any brakes, just keep going.
So is that, but that's nowhere as big as it is to go from California to Michigan, which might take a week to drive. So the continent is not as big as the United States, right?
I'd have to check this, because you see things online where they start putting different countries and things within the boundaries, and Australia is pretty big.
It is pretty big. Okay.
Yeah. It's not a small nation. The Western Australian part is sort of 1/3 of the country, and the city of Boorloo, which is the colony that calls it Perth, is the most isolated city in the world. So, we are very diverse, and it is quite based on distance.
Okay, I got this. Who were the first people to come to Australia? Who founded Australia?
So there were trade routes that had existed within Australia, up in the northern part of Australia through the Macassans, which were Muslim nations in around Indonesia. There were, Australia was featured on the map of China in 1403. So Australia was known about. Obviously, it wasn't called Australia. These are all, colonial terms imposed. But it was invaded by the British. The British had an overpopulation of prison communities, and they're on the Thames River in these massive ships. And so they had this, made this decision that they were going to relocate all their undesirables to the furthest point that they could possibly go, and that just happened to be Australia. And so Australia was founded on the premise that there was no inhabitants, because if there was inhabitants, they were to have a treaty with them, and that was in the secret instructions to Lieutenant Cook in and around from the British monarchy and government. So what they did was they claimed terra nullius, which is the term used for uninhabited land, and they classified the Black people of Australia definition of plants and animals, so in the category of flora and fauna. And that was,
let me see if I'm understanding this. The first people that the British sent their worst people, they call it, those were Black people, or those were white people to Australia?
They were white people. They were predominantly English and Irish prisoners that had, for whatever reason, been incarcerated on these ships on the Thames River in London, and they needed a solution. So their solution was that they wanted to ship their undesirable populations as far away as they could possibly go, and that just happened to be Australia.
That's crazy. I hate you that much. I'm sending you to a faraway land.
Yeah. Wow. And they then had it, I guess, enforced by what they called the pensioner guards. So these were, and this is just the I don't even have a word for it, honestly, but this is just the mentality of the British at that time. So the pensioner guards were all of their soldiers who'd served under the name of the Queen and King of Britain, and had, for whatever reason, been maybe maimed or injured in war. And so they didn't want them either. They sent them to Australia to look after the prisoners. And so there's this kind of really bent and distorted and twisted history of white Australia's invasion of Black Australia.
Okay. Now, but before they got there were Black people already there, or no? There was nobody there.
No, there were 800 countries of Black nations in Australia. So they were highly functioning, sophisticated cultural groups. Everyone had a trade route around Australia, and that's evidenced in archaeology when they found different cultural artifacts across the country. So Australia, just to give a kind of commercial concept, it was a Wakanda. It was, there were different tribes coming together for common trade relations and economics through bartering systems. They had cultural religions and philosophies, languages. So it was definitely, and as our ancestors tell us, from the beginning of time. So Aboriginal people have been there, from the beginning of time.
Okay, one more question on this, then we're gonna move along, so to speak. The first people in the world came out of Africa. All right. How do those people get to Australia?
Everything was, the seas that we see and the oceans as we know at the moment weren't in the same format. So in my country, to give you an example, the boab tree and the coastline is called the Kimberley coastline. The boab tree is very distinct in its provenance, and if you kind of look at the map of the world, you'll see that this particular coastline, if the ocean was in a different formation, would have at some point come into contact with what is also called the Kimberley coastline of Africa, and ironically just happens to have the same boab tree as we do. So yeah, there's definitely at that point in time a different world than what we know it.
So they sailed from Africa to Australia.
I mean, it may be possible that it wasn't even needing to sail, because if you think about the way in which the plates of the earth have shifted and the way the oceans have kind of changed, we're going back to the beginning of time here. So you've got to kind of almost reimagine that it possibly would have all been connected at some point.
Okay. But I guess my point is, America was founded by, as they might say, Christopher Columbus, even though there were Indians here. When is the founding of Australia? Is there a year that they claim that?
Yep. So they claim they founded, we claim they invaded on 1788.
Oh,
and
okay.
That's when they planted their.
Okay. But that's the British saying their version.
Yeah.
Okay. Do they have a guy they said was the guy who, like we have a Christopher Columbus, that he really didn't even do it? Do they have a guy there that they say?
Yeah, so it was Lieutenant James Cook, and you'll see his history kind of comes up. He was very active in the Pacific. He ended up meeting his fate in Hawaii, where he was taken out of the gene pool in their part of the history. So there's a kind of common thread of story of this guy. Okay.
So now as we move up, now there are Black people in Australia. And what are they called?
Well, for the purposes of convenience, we're defined as Aboriginal Australia. We're also defined as First Nations, as Black, as Native, as Savages, as whatever you want to call us.
Really?
In the Western space. But in terms of Aboriginal people, we're very tribal still. So we're known by our tribal nations. And as I said, I'm Nyikina and Walmatjarri. And other people will say, well, I'm Gunyandi, I'm Bunaba, I'm Gidja, I'm Yunga, I'm Wajak. And you keep going, there's 800. So everyone has, an affiliation to a specific tribe.
Is that, the words that you just used, is that English? Is that some other, that's just the word, that's the word?
That would have been, did I say 8 words? It's 8 different languages, 8 different Aboriginal names for different countries. So
Okay.
within those countries, they all have their own language. And then there were common words that were used. An example of that would be mai, which is food. So a trading language, because if you're trading across the country, you obviously need to know a few basic words that will ease of passage, and food, obviously, mai being one of them.
Okay, I don't mean no disrespect on this question, and where I'm going with this. Are there dark-skinned people in Australia?
Yes, yeah. So I will show a bit of a presentation which kind of orientates everyone around that.
Yes.
But yeah, Aboriginal people have had all the post-colonial issues of ancestral rape, of slavery, of ancestral love and intermarriage and things like that. So there's definitely a spectrum of people of color in Australia.
Okay, and this is on you personally. I hope don't hang up on me. You're not dark, so there's light. Somebody white is in your family.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a product of there was a point in time where there was ancestral rape. My great-grandfather is a product of that. His mother was raped by a white settler, and he was kind of cast out. And then my father is Irish, so there's obviously that connection. My tribe, my nation, my country is matrilineal. So my mother's side of the family is my identity. And so predominantly I grew up in the Nyigina community in Aboriginal Australia.
Okay. All right. I got one more on this one. For your complexion, how can I tell that you are black? That's why really.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? Because I don't mean no disrespect, but how could I tell if I'm in Australia to say, okay, you're black, and I want to do some things that some upset you? You know what they do to black people. How would that be? The way you lived, what you say? Or?
Yeah. So it's being part of the national Aboriginal community, growing up on so where I'm from wasn't colonized very long. It's 132 years ago was the first sighting of white people, and so our communities are still very strong tribally, and they're still very strong in their customary law. So I was brought up in that community. There's a kind of a cultural process, we kind of lovingly call it who's your mob. When you're able to tell your lineage, as we all are, back from your provenance of where your country is to, who your family is, there's kind of trading languages around that. There was a push with Australia to cleanse the gene pool of, darker skinned community members. And so the eugenics movement was really strong in Australia, where they were trying to breed out the Aboriginal complexion. So there's a lot of those kind of complexities that exist in America as well, because there's also, you look at Quincy Jones's daughters, they don't exactly jump out immediately. Yes. So, we're all the spectrum.
So did you have to live in the black neighborhood in Australia, wherever you lived? Is there black neighborhoods, white neighborhoods? You can't live over that side of town. You got to play over there, and those things, those dynamics that happen here. So
I didn't really grow up, much. I did have time in the cities, but I grew up in a very remote Aboriginal community. So to give you an idea of that, it's 28 families living outside of a very small town at the time. The population of that town at that time would have been about just under 2,000 people. Okay. And so, 28 family groups and, sort of living off the land. People still hunt and gather. It's not an unknown story in our community. You're still eating traditional bush foods off the land, when the seasonal changes are and the harvest times and the times, for catching different sea animals. And then
really,
people still eat.
So you know how to do. So you know how to fish and catch the animals and take a spear and get a hog or something like that. Is it that
Yeah. People still actively participate in hunting and gathering. So yeah, we have a very strong culture, still centered around traditional ways of learning and living.
Okay, how about this one? Where you lived, would that be called the ghetto in America?
It would be. I'm not even sure if there's a word for it. It's the outback. So it is, when you, I guess Australia's biggest export being Crocodile Dundee, when you look at those pictures of, this kind of rugged landscapes, that's where our communities, a lot of our traditional communities still exist. But having said that, there are still migrations to cities, and there are still areas that are predominantly Black areas. And they're sort of one of the well-known ones. If you're going back to Sydney, would have been Redfern, although that is in the process of gentrification. So they've pushed out a lot of the Aboriginal history there.
So there are ghettos in big cities, what we would consider a ghetto in Sydney or what have you.
Yeah.
And the ghettos where they had the Black people live.
Yeah, and so they usually had, and I don't think this is an uncommon global story. They used to have a lot of the Aboriginal populations, the Black populations, in the inner city, and that was because they were the domestics and the servants.
I got you.
We also had a permit system, so you weren't allowed to enter the boundary line that they had set for themselves after a certain period of time, unless you had paperwork.
Sundown towns and that kind of
things like that. Yeah. We just had different names for it, but it really our turning point in terms of the civil rights and stuff really happened with Marcus and Amy Jacques Garvey and their kind of bigger vision worldwide to connect people of color, Black people, universally through communication, information, and a bit of skill. So the merchant Black Star Line, Merchant Seaman, the newspaper that they had made its way to Australia, and so that was really a big marker where Aboriginal people all of a sudden knew that the world was a little bit bigger than this oppression. Australia at the time in a white Australia policy, so we had the segregation, we had the same issues that were happening, apartheid, it was all there. So
okay, so you just answered this question, but I'm gonna ask it again just to make sure I'm clear. Okay, they had slavery in Australia.
Yes. Yeah, so they had slavery in a couple of ways. So in the Pacific, Melanesian nations, and they're Black nations too, what they would do was they would go and basically steal people from the islands and deposit them into Australia to work in the cane fields. So there was cane fields, the railroads, a bit of the cotton industry, but not so much because cotton wasn't necessarily the primary industry. And the pearling industry. So pearls were a bit more substantial. So they have resisted the word slavery for such a long time. They used to call it blackbirding. And then in 1901, they did what's called the Pacific Immigration Restriction Act, and what we call the White Australia policy came after that. So they deported a lot of the Kanaki Melanesian communities, and also any Aboriginal people that they had intermarried or connected with over the sort of 40 years of this blackbirding, and just threw them back on an island. It didn't necessarily matter what island it was. And then, started moving on, the coloureds only and the whites only, and the whole segregation.
They went through that too.
Stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Well, how about this? When we had in our slavery, we had ways to escape. Is there such things as slaves escaping in Australia? And then, if they did, where did they escape to? Was there a free territory and a non-free territory like we had in America?
It was. I think you'd say it's different in that respect because we're an island continent. So where do you go? You can't really sort of go off unless you're going into the Pacific Islands, and that's on the East Coast. On the Indian Ocean side, Indonesia and that whole kind of triangular space of India, Africa, is over that side. So that's a lot of sea. But what we had was active resistance around the country. So there were Aboriginal warriors who were banding together to try and stop the stealing of land and community. And so we had the spears, we had all the weaponry, but they had the guns. So in our history, no nation laid down and said, yeah, we want you here. There was a consistent active resistance.
Are there people, like you said, warriors that people know their names, that they're more well known as, the warriors that really everybody celebrates or something like that?
Yeah, so there are a couple of names that have come through history, but through, celebrating Aboriginal history, Black history of Australia, we've been able to unearth a lot more names and really start to give them a space as well. So, there's great hidden histories that have been, given a place now in our space to know and love and own and feel strong about and celebrate.
Is there so when slavery ended in Australia, like it did here in America, Emancipation Day, is there a day like that in Australia?
No, and in many respects it hasn't stopped, because they still have some shady practices around bringing unskilled labor forces to the kind of cane fields and to some of those other industries in the pastoral industry. And so we've got stories that are happening in real time now.
Really?
With, say, Papua New Guinea and the Pacific, where white Australia has an indentured labor force, and it's stolen wages, it's all of that kind of atrocity that you wouldn't know unless you know.
But the common practice of slavery ended at some point. Was it a governmental law that ended the common practice of slavery there?
So what they did was, and it's sort of playing out here in America, it's been playing out in Canada, was what they did was they incarcerated they basically stole children. So the stolen generation was incarcerated into a mission system, which they, I guess, call reservations, or here it's the Border Homeland Security, who were, taking children by force away from parents here with the Latin communities. So we had that imposed upon us. And so these were government funded under the name of the church. They were incarcerated. Aboriginal people, when they were born in Australia, were given a criminal record. So, you were born a criminal in Australia under their systems, and you were then processed. And if your skin was lighter, you would be most vulnerable to be taken. And that then goes back to the eugenics movements, because they were trying to assimilate, people who look like me into their society, to renounce any connection to our cultural ties. But, they thought by educating us through their systems that would make us want to be white, but it only affirmed our identity even more, and going back to a community to then fight them with their own tools.
So now you all have very similar circumstance. Can a Black person make it in Australia and be a politician, a very successful businessman, and go to the better colleges? Like, some of those things are able to happen here in America.
So yeah, that has happened. We have had politicians on both sides. Similarly here with the Republican Democrat, we have Liberal and Labor. So we've had politicians, and we currently have members of Parliament in Australia. But the bigger kind of issue in Australia, because we're so close to our cultural continuum, and we're not from somewhere else, we're from here, it's about not necessarily measuring our success in Western metrics. It's about, have we gone through law? Are we still practicing our culture? Never forget and don't lose that cultural continuum, because Australia is one of the longest cultural continuums in terms of Aboriginal people. And so we come from a long line of history. We know where we're from. We didn't have that same disruption as slavery happened in America.
But I want to go back to this. Could a Black guy who went to one of the better colleges, University of Sydney, could he become the CEO of a large Fortune, 500 company like he could in America?
I'd say he could, but he's obviously going to face every level of disadvantage as you could possibly get, and every hurdle to get there. But if you look at just say even in the NBA, we've got Paddy Mills, who's an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander man from Australia, who's playing in the NBA in the United States. We've had big markers in our history. There's a individual called Concolino who's still in the Guinness Book of World Records for his circus tricks that he could do. So we've had these major markers and individuals in history who have attained success. But that's called, that's the success of being assimilated into a society that we actually don't necessarily want to participate in.
Again, I still let me go on this again a little bit more. Could a Black man or lady, could you in Australia work at the largest law firm?
I could if I jump through every hoop and hurdle. And
so they do have Black people in large law firms. That there's a Black community of upperly mobile people that are, they making 200,000-300,000 salary, whatever, right?
So there is a band of, I guess, the middle class or the elite communities, in the same ways that there are around the world. But obviously it's the same story. It's not the you're just given these positions. You're basically clawing your way to the top to be able to attain that.
Sure. Are there Black only colleges and universities?
So there kind of is and isn't, in the sense that there's a place called Bachelor in the Northern Territory, which is for all intents and purposes a Black college. Its staff majority is non-Indigenous people, so white people are usually the educators. So the structure isn't as strong as it is here. And we're still in, if you look at the timeline of the history of America versus Australia in terms of colonization, it's a very short time. It's 200, not even 300 years, and in my part of Australia it's only 132 years.
Are there, as we kind of, I don't know, maybe come to a close, and then we're gonna, I'm gonna make sure I got everything that I was thinking I was trying to get. Are there people walking around, Black people walking around with T-shirts and dashiki saying Black is beautiful and I'm Black and I'm proud, or you know what I mean? Or do they have to kind of tone it down?
No, I mean, we've had generations of civil rights resistance, and now there is a space for people to hold their colours up and be proud of who they are in terms of Aboriginal communities in Australia. Things are slowly changing. The conversation about treaty, about Australia getting out of the Commonwealth into the Republic of Australia and resetting everything and, sitting down at our table. So there's a lot of changes that are kind of happening. But yeah, it's just the fundamentals of, there's so much more that the world needs to know and doesn't know about what Aboriginal Australia looks like and Black people of Australia are. Okay.
Is there a flag or a symbol of original Black Australians? You know what I mean? That identifies them, a color scheme, a logo, or anything like that?
Yeah, so there was a flag until just recently, and I say, it's still in use, but there's some contention around it because it was sold to a white company to then make profit off of. So it got commercialized and taken away from. Yeah, so the color is red, black, and yellow, and the yellow was a circle for the sun, and it held significance in the civil rights movements, and was something that we could all rally around as 800 different nations. But until recently, we don't have that in the same way anymore because of this controversy. And if we do fly it, it's usually upside down as a signal for distress. So there's ways to use it. But there's also not only Aboriginal people in Australia. In the territory, it's also considered Torres Strait Islands, and they have their own unique culture, very similar to sort of the Melanesian communities and close to Papua New Guinea. They have their own flag, and the flag is their traditional headdress. So I did have, the presentation, which shows this for people to be able to see it in true color.
Okay. Is there a rivalry between blacks and whites there, where there were riots, massacres like they were here in America?
Yeah. So we have resources online available around the maps of genocide, where Aboriginal people were just murdered and in the worst possible way, similar to the United States and other countries. Yeah. So that race relations in Australia is still got a long way to go. It's still, as I said, an illegal occupation with the British without a treaty to be there, therefore they shouldn't. So we're still there, even though we're 3% of the population of Australia, affirming our right as the first peoples, as the original people.
But then after the beginning, when the British did it, did the regular people in Australia start fighting among themselves, where they had things like, here in America, we had one called the Tulsa, Oklahoma riot, where the white people just got mad at them and bombed it and killed. Do they have stories like that?
Yeah. It's one of the stories that stick in my mind was there was a barbecue, a cookout, where the Aboriginal community, after harvesting the produce and working the cattle, were all invited to, and it was all just laced with poison, and so they murdered a whole community of people. It was a little under 100, piled their bodies up and set them all alight. And so we have oral history from one of the survivors, who was a young child at the time, telling all this oral history. He was there, so we have really horrible examples similarly to the United States.
Is Black history taught in us to students widely as it is here in America? Is there a Black History Month, that kind of thing?
Black history is not taught in Australia. That's why I founded Black History Month in 2008, because we'd been told, we were ugly people, that we were no good for anything, and all the other kind of negative stereotypes. And so I felt that there was something different, and I knew better. I knew, looking around in my own community, that they were really excellent people. And so it was starting to dig into their own archives, and through our community, to begin to unearth great stories, great moments in Black history, and start to tell that story. So that's the whole purpose and reason of Australia's Black History Month.
And so they do have a Black History Month, or they do not?
We do, yes. So July. So July 1st to 31st. Yeah.
Okay, you say you're doing some things. What are you doing? You have a Facebook and other things that you're doing?
So we have a movement of people in our community who actively research and find the hidden stories. And in July, we published on the official Black History Month website 31 new stories, one for each day of the month.
Oh.
And we induct everyone into the Hall of Fame. This coming year, we'll start to be releasing more written work. We've got an imprint, Honey Ant Press, that's in development. So we're going to start to, get this into the education system in the way in which we need to, which will initially, because Australia is still hesitant and resistant to telling the truth, so it'll be through parents in our communities and
Okay.
community groups, and just getting the knowledge to our people first and everyone else, because they need to know that they're on our land.
With that said, are there people in the government and higher ups of in corporate America, whatever, that are embracing what you are doing?
There are, and we've had Black History Month events celebrated across Australia. We've also had international relationships with Canada and the US and England, the Netherlands and Wales. So, you know, we're definitely in dialogue around the world with other movements around Black History Month.
All right, two more questions. As a result of what you're trying to do you have to fear for your life because you're shaking up the boat? I know that's drastic, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, look, I think Black History Month is probably the least of my worries around that space. I led an active resistance against the Australian government in 2015, and we shut the whole of Australia down and scaled to 20 million people. So Black History Month is fine. It's all the other blacktivism work that I've been doing in Australia that would have my number.
Ooh, okay, so now one more question. What are you? Are you an activist? Are you know what I mean? Are you okay, let's just go with active. Are you an activist, or this is your calling to do this?
So I come from over 100 years of Aboriginal activism in Australia. It started long before me, and I'm the child of the revolution, so I have to continue the fight, and with the tools now of technology, able to amplify it worldwide in a way in which my parents and grandparents were unable to do. So I'm definitely that. I also work in the arts and entertainment and tech industries. So,
oh man, I got an icon on my channel. Unbelievable.
Thank you.
When did you decide to do this? I mean, when did you decide? Again, I use this term, and I ain't trying to throw no sugar on it or salt on it, to put your life on the line to do this. When did you say this is what I'm going to do?
Look, it was almost, it chose me. It wasn't a conscious decision.
Yeah.
I could have just played it safe and had a very successful career in the arts and entertainment industry in Australia. But at the time in 2015, when the Australian government were attempting to forcibly remove traditional communities, including my own in Australia, I just took the cause up, and I knew that I had the skills around technology to be able to get the message global. And that's how we were able to, in 5 months, become a 20 million plus movement around the world. And it was not only in Australia, we were shutting down cities in Europe as well.
And the movement is there a name to the movement?
Yeah, so the movement, it was SOS Black Australia, and it was around the stop the forced closures of Aboriginal communities, because there was no plan for, displacing populations. They had no facilities or support services around that. They were literally just trying to do a great land grab of 2015, and we weren't having it. So we were successful in shutting that down. We were successful in the removal of the Prime Minister of Australia, who is the equal to the president. But I always say with caution that we've slowed their process, because I don't believe that they've ever taken their agenda off the table. So it's just constantly being prepared and just watching to see what their next moves are around, theft of land and encroachment of land and destruction of traditional sacred sites, which are constant. There's too much mining in our cultural lands because we're mineral rich, in the same way as you see around Africa with the exploitation. So yeah, so we're constantly vigilantly always sleeping with one eye open on that space.
Okay, one more question, and this is not a question, this is something I want you to do. This is it. This is the end of the interview. What do you want people to know? What do you want to happen? How do you want people to support you? You follow me? Yeah.
I think the biggest takeaway here is for people to know that the history of Australia is a Black history, that we are part of the bigger world's majority people, that the Aboriginal story speaks to the First Nations experience of Native American people. It also speaks to the Black experience of America. We are bound by our histories through the civil rights movements and through the activism spaces. And, you know, it's about truth telling, so telling the truth. And it's also about knowing our people and celebrating them in the way in which we do through Australia's Black History Month, and just amplifying the story. So whenever someone says to you, you know, Australia is this great nation, you say, well, hang on a minute, we know a bit of the history of race relations in Australia. We also understand that, you know, Britain illegally occupied Australia. So changing the narrative, I think, is the biggest thing globally for people to understand, because that's not the case. People tend to go, you know, I want to go see the Sydney Opera House, or
Right.
I love the kangaroos, but there's a whole hidden history that is not yet told, and that's our duty of care, I believe, in our lifetime.
And then lastly, how do people support your efforts? You got a website, you know what I mean? Can people donate, whatever?
So we've been self-funding this whole process. We will have resources for sale shortly, which are, you know, the stories of our people, with the Honey Ant Press, the publishing arm, that's going to be releasing that soon. We do have a website. So our take back of the word black is to remove the C. So it's BLAK. So if you're looking for us, you will look at Black History Month, BLAK historymonth.com. That's how you'll find the website. And in the website is an archive that's been built since 2008. And each year there's a celebration. So you'll see this year's celebration, which was the artists. Previous to that, in 2020, we were celebrating the activists of Australia. But to just give you an example of some of the people that we've celebrated. So did you know the drummer of the Average White Band was a Black man from Australia? You know, there's people in our history that are, you know, universal, that nobody necessarily knows their ancestry. But, you know, we're celebrating our people, because I guarantee you on any given day across America, Pick Up the Pieces comes on the radio, you know, and you're listening to the drumming of a Black man from Australia.
Are there books now being written, or are you writing a book?
Yeah, so
this history.
So we are undertaking that through the publishing arm, sort of similarly to how you've done. There's a lot of things happening. We've got a lot of things happening around Black business. I'm speaking at an event coming up very shortly on celebrating Black business in Australia.
Okay.
You know, we're looking at all sorts of different areas, and the tech space as well. So yeah, there's a lot happening. We're definitely contributing as Black History Month.
As we come to a close, is there some question I have not asked you that you know, I should, you know, I thought I did what I did, but is there something that you want to say, a question that I have not asked you?
It's not a question. I really want to show you just some images so you can see everything that I've talked about. It, what Australia looks like to the Aboriginal people of Australia. It's you know, some photos of Aboriginal people. And these aren't people that I don't know. These are my ancestors and my family. So it's personal, you know, photos. So you can connect me to my story a little bit better. So yeah, if I can do that with
please go ahead. Yes.
Okay, so if you look at this map, that's Australia. That's what you see on any kind of topical map of the world. But what you're looking at are all the countries, all the Black nations that exist within that map. So to Black people of Australia, this is what Australia is and looks like. And they're all trading customary in the same way as Europe and Africa. In terms of me, I wanted to just show you where I'm from. So I'm up in the northwest of Western Australia, the Nigina and Walmatjarri nations. You'll see in that little inset map. So we're kind of on the Indian Ocean side, close to Indonesia, as close as you can get by being in Australia. These photos are of my family. These are Nugana ancestors. My grandma's in these pictures, my great-grandma. In the Aboriginal customary system of community, all your grandparents, siblings are your grandparents, all your mother's cousins and siblings are your parents, and all your cousins are your sisters and brothers. So we have big, large family groups and a really strong kind of cultural ecology around that. We're still, as I said, it's only 132 years. So practicing culture, these are some of the ancestors from up in our country. Their markings hold very strong ceremonial and cultural significance, and the stories that they're, ceremonially performing have strong cultural significance to particular parts of country, and in this instance, in our country. And you'll see behind them, there's a boa tree from the Kimberley. I just put this photo up because these are some of the younger children in our community who are actively, celebrating and participating in culture. As I said, it's our success as people of colour are around, upholding our traditional ceremonial rights and cultural entitlements around that. Yes, we participate in the Western space and we celebrate our success, but this to us is, restoring and retaining cultural continuum really important because we're not that far removed from it. Up in Papua New Guinea and the top of Australia, this kind of little map just shows you there's a set of islands up there, and that's the Torres Strait Islander people. And so Paddy Mills, the NBA player, his father is from up in this region. His mother is from the mainland of Australia. And that's the flag that they have, which I mentioned, it's the symbol of their headdress, which, speaks to their particular part of the country. Yeah, and then lastly, that's the customary wear of traditional Torres Strait Islander people who are still, as I said, part of the Australian Black history story as well. So that's what I wanted to share with you.
Yes, love it.
You can see it in Technicolor, that we're definitely strong Black nations participating globally in our bigger story.
I love it. Glad we got that in. Yes, I love it. Yeah. Do you eat any kind of different type of food, or different kind of drink, or wear different kind of clothes, any of that kind of thing? And that,
yeah.
Yeah.
So traditional dress for Aboriginal people up in my part of the country, because it's hot, is that we don't wear anything necessarily. So that's not in any other way apart from that's just it's a cultural thing. Obviously now, with the intersection between the missions and contemporary society, we do wear clothing, but traditionally not.
You did not wear clothing?
No. And
walk around naked?
Yeah, because it's hot.
Oh my God, I'm on my way. Really?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of nations, and the men would wear maybe a hair belt, and potentially a shell to cover the lower part or not. So yeah, that's our traditional dress. But in the South, there's Aboriginal communities that had kangaroo skin cloaks or possum cloaks because it was cold down there. So they would have a different, style of dress than us, or in the rainforest, they wore different things. They actually had swords and weaponry that's very unique to the area up in the rainforests of far north Queensland. So yeah, it's imagining the Wakanda story in real time in our nations. We have very distinct looks and tribal designs and food.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay,
the food.
I got one more question. How did you get to be so smart? Did you did you go to college and a special grade school, college, all that kind of thing? What's your educational background?
So I did, but I did my sort of what do they call it here? The year 12, like 12th grade, 11th, and all of that. I did it by correspondence. So I didn't have a teacher. I had like a little book that would appear in the mail and a cassette tape back in the day. And so I'd had to listen to the tape and, you know, make sense of it and then fill in these study books and send them back. So my education wasn't orthodox in the way you'd go to like a public school necessarily. I had a remote learning experience, which I think for me set me up better in leadership because I had to self-author from a very early age. And I did go to university. I went to art school to pursue my arts and entertainment career, which, as I said, I've been participating in successfully actually since the age of 16. So I've had a career in music and publishing and writing, and currently doing stuff in the United States, which is why.
So you're in music. You write songs. That type of thing. What do you mean?
So I multi-instrumentalist, but I did retire. So now I manage some different acts. I also, we've established the United Stages Collective here in LA as a push to Aboriginal inclusion in Hollywood, and written a full feature-length script just the other day, signed off on that one. So yeah, a lot happening, multi-art form, because in a cultural way, you don't necessarily say that you're just doing one thing, you do everything.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. I know we've been at you for a minute now because it was so much to cover. I hope I got an understanding of what you're telling me.
Yeah, I'm glad, because if anyone does have questions, feel free to reach out to me via the Black History Month website. That would be the easiest.
Yes, I got an understanding of what you're telling me. I think everybody, I hope you did too. Subscribe to Strong Inspirations. If I don't know, hit the button. It's free. Don't ask for no information. Like this video. If you don't like no other video on the channel, you see how I'm growing, you got to like this video. Hit the notifications bell. Tell somebody about Strong Inspirations. Do that. All right. And to you, my sister, I say with all sincerity, I want you to stay strong, stay safe, stay on your grind. I love what you're doing. I got me an icon on the channel.
Thank you.
Got me a Ida B. Wells, who else? A Harriet Tubman type. You know them names. That's who this is. She like one of them in Australia. Got one of them on the channel. My God, I got to meet you in person and shake your hand, everybody. So hit, that I'm out. I got nothing else. You got anything you want to say to people? Bye-bye or whatever.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Kansas. Yeah, I think you sold me on that one for sure. I'll be there.
How do you say goodbye in Australia?
There's many different languages, as I said. In our language, it's Galeo.
There you go, everybody.
Galeo.
That's it. Bye-bye, we out.